I have an audience member that has been telling me about the industry data for Black Myth Wukong. Their conclusion, or I guess, I don't know if it's a conclusion, but let's just call it an argument. The argument is that the industry shows that because Xbox is the least selling of the consoles, it's likely that the developers could not have been bothered to actually port the game to the Xbox. Now, I have to go ahead and preface this. Shout out to my audience member, the IT Crowd 22. I got to go ahead and say, though, you do know that this is a shift of the goalpost, right? Because number one, the developers have never said or claimed anything as such that it's because they don't care about Xbox. Now, that would be outlandish if they did. But again, you're interpolating that from data sets about a game that is pretty much the first release for this developer to both the console platforms. I hope you know and you see how much of a logical leap you'd have to make to actually even infer such a hypothesis or a theory. I'm just pointing it out because, again, I've warned a lot of folk that this data thing is a double-edged sword. You wield carefully. If not, you could hurt yourself in the process. So they said this based on my video about Black Myth Wukong, because again, I've been telling you all that it's been really interesting. The Turk has got all these people baiting themselves. He says, as you said, the industry has the data, which might explain why Wukong isn't on Xbox. Interesting. Might explain? I'll give you a hypothesis here. Maybe the data suggests that it's not worth the time and effort required to release it on the platform. Okay, so number one, it seems like you've capitulated already to a conclusion that I haven't even made, which is that possibly the game could run on the Series S. Interesting that you actually made this claim 2 hours ago, but then just a few minutes ago, 44 minutes ago, in the comment string, when I was talking about myself being skeptic about the developers, you came out and said, you keep talking about evidence. What evidence do you have to prove that the developers are wrong? Is your evidence based on the Turk guy who's been performing a benchmark on his PC? So which is it, the IT crowd? Do you think it's the data that Xbox isn't selling well that has probably pushed them to not bother reporting the game to the Series S and X? Or do you think it's because the game isn't running on the Series S and X? So there's one of two possibilities. You're either trolling or you probably don't even know what position you hold. Because you know what's crazy? No one's concluded anything. We didn't even conclude anything about Black Myth Wukong. All I said, and all the data is showing with the Turk, when I posited that the game plays on the Steam Deck, I came in with raw raster power. I said, I see the game playing on the Steam Deck. I know from a rasterization perspective that the Series S is more powerful than the Steam Deck. That was my hypothesis. So what is the problem here? In fact, I decided that I was going to download it on the Steam Deck, download some save files, and go ahead and make sure that I could test the chapters on the Steam Deck to see how it performed. And then while I was at it, the Turk started doing his data set. Go back and walk through my Black Myth Wukong videos if you could take the time to do that. So again, let's go ahead and let's see what's going on. So you were talking about this data set, and I was reading and I'm just wondering, about an hour ago. And you said something. You said, I did my research, because everybody was asking you, what research do you have? And you don't care, and you said, and don't care about the data you provided, which is based on a single country in the UK. You say, I can also mention sales of Elden Ring based on Europe, which looks like this: 44% PC, 27% PlayStation 5, 16% Xbox, and 13% PS4. Now, this data set, I'm sure you're probably citing it to say that Xbox is the least of the sales platform for Elden Ring. And so I said, well, maybe is not a conclusive statement. So I asked you about the research you're talking about. And you said, well, it's definitely not a conclusive statement. So I replied and asked you, I said, so based on your data, Xbox console sells less games and are not enough for developers to port. Is that what you're saying? And I said, before you answer, Elden Ring that you just cited is coming to Xbox with Night Rain, their second game. I said it would have been validated if Elden Ring had announced Night Rain and said no Xbox version. It wasn't worth the salt. Am I missing something? And then you replied. You said, yes, you missed the key point here. Game Science is an indie studio, and Black Myth Wukong is their first game, primarily targeted at the Chinese market. Interesting. Imagine a situation where people are expecting to see you release a game on all three platforms, but then you announce that your team lacks the expertise to develop for a specific platform and you only release your game on PC. Suddenly, YouTubers start making conspiracy videos claiming that the game must have been paid. That game must have been paid. VG to keep his game exclusive to Steam. Interesting, because that actually happened, right? And this is beautiful that you brought this up. This is why I want to train y'all in the art of gathering receipts. Oh man. You see, in August, Baldur's Gate developers were having challenges making their co-op game, the co-op piece of their game, run on the Series S. So they then delayed the release of the game on the Xbox because they were trying to solve this issue. Their boss came on a podcast, FPS podcast, Friends per Second podcast, and said that the development cycle of launching on all platforms was giving them problems. MBG, a PlayStation head, came out and said, kind of crazy, Baldur's Gate 3 will be a console exclusive. Sony has nothing to do with it. And then he got responded to by one of the people in the Baldur's Gate 3 pipeline and said, it's not a PlayStation 5 console, mate. I never made that conclusion that MBG made. All I made was a speculation. You see, I'm not a fool. I mean, I am kind of a fool because I'm bothering with some of you that don't like truth. And I have to repeat the same thing over and over again. So in the eyes of some people, but I am not a fool to go ahead and draw such a conclusion because I have no evidence to that particular conclusion. However, I can speculate now that this whole conversation is missing one key piece, which is no developer in game science has come out to refute that there is a PlayStation exclusivity deal. Until that is done, I have all free reign to speculate all I want. And what's even crazier is, in testing Microsoft's own statement, I can see that Microsoft has a likelihood of them being truthful, which is that the game being delayed is not due to platform limitations. Them saying our platform is not the problem. Well, this whole thing that you are basically talking about with, the Tarek doing the benchmark on his PC is testing Microsoft's statement. You know that, right? It's testing Microsoft's statement as well. So for you to come out and say the game is geared to the Chinese market, yada, 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 no, you're dodging because you didn't answer my Elden Ring question. You're dodging. What do you think this is? Playground time? I'm sorry. But if you're going to come out here and you want to cite data and you want to talk about what is going on, I encourage you that you be very well steeped in basically creating your argument and sticking with your argument. Because Black Myth Wukong, they advertised their game as a game that was coming to all platforms at a given date. Then they removed all Xbox paraphernalia or whatever it is, everything that had to be associated with Xbox as the game was getting marketed to be released. Why did they remove anything Xbox? If they still intended to bring the game to Xbox, no problem. Baldur's Gate 3, they were very clear about their marketing. Coming to Xbox at a later date. They were quick to say it. In fact, when MBG doubled down and continued to talk about it, which in tweets he has deleted since then, he said apparently Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have an exclusivity deal with PlayStation. It's not releasing on Xbox yet due to development issues with the Series XS, And then he went ahead and cited that they were doing technical issue stuff. And then this guy replied and said, we aren't releasing any console version yet because it's not August 31st. The developers were quick to respond and get in front of stuff. Why are the developers at Game Science not cleaning up this thing and saying there is no exclusivity deal if there's no exclusivity deal? They give me room to speculate because right now, Microsoft is on track to actually be more likely truthful based on the Turk's data, based on the fact that the game is running on the Steam Deck. Again, you have to think critically about what is being told to you. When I responded to this question again, this was also another thing that I thought I'd basically throw in here. I responded and I said, because somebody was asking me a question, Dante 19890, you asked me, you said you're trying to argue with the devs here that they say that the trouble is with the Series S. The game is already having problems running on a PS5. I think this is a Cope take. What Cope? I didn't conclude anything. I think you basically made up your own thing and then you coped about it and you tried to sling it at me. Miss me with that. I said, because the devs are the only one that wrote no Unreal Engine, I said, I'm not a YouTuber who hasn't walked the walk. I just don't take some dev's word without doing my own verification. You can believe them. The evidence does not favor their conclusion. And I didn't even make any conclusions. I'm just saying, from what I've tested and seen from what they're saying, I'm not convinced. Simple. The burden of proof is on them, not on me. They're the ones that actually have the burden of actually porting their game if they choose to. Now, again, I'm not saying that they are obliged to port their game, but the burden of proof is on them to actually give their audience on the Xbox side a valid reason, just like the Baldur's Gate 3 developers did, as to why the game is not coming to the Xbox. Are they more than the Baldur's Gate 3 developers? Are they more prestigious than them? They are the ones that are new to console. The Baldur's Gate developers have been doing this for a good amount of time. Am I right? The Baldur's Gate developers are the ones that have more experience in this kind of thing in terms of basically being, very much transparent with their audiences. They should take an example and follow suit with these guys who have done it before them, who basically had their game be the highest selling games in multiple categories over and over and over again. This is a model and a stellar example to follow. Why are they not following the example? It's okay. Maybe the bar is too high to hold any developer to, but we sure did hold Baldur's Gate 3 developers to that bar, and we had no problem. So they can come out and basically do what they feel they need to do. It's not obligated for them to come out and do this, but I'm just saying, we've seen this situation before. Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.